Used to be gaudy, now uptown feeling shoddy bar, haiku don't rhyme. As we trudged up Madison Avenue, my mind swirled with questions. Why hadn't Zeus given me a winter coat? Why did Percy Jackson live so far uptown? Why did pedestrians keep staring at me? I wondered if my divine radiance was starting to return. Perhaps the New Yorkers were awed by my obvious power and unearthly good looks. Meg McCaffrey set me straight. "You smell," she said. "You look like you've just been mugged." I have just been mugged. Also enslaved by a small child. It's not slavery. She chewed off a piece of her thumb cuticle and spit it out. It's more like mutual cooperation. Mutual in the sense that you give orders and I am forced to cooperate. Yep. She stopped in front of a storefront window. "See? You look gross." My reflection stared back at me, except it was not my reflection. It couldn't be. The face was the same as on Lester Papadopoulos' ID. I looked about 16. My medium-length hair was dark and curly, a style I had rocked in Athenian times and again in the 1970s. My eyes were blue. My face was pleasing enough in a dorkish way, but it was marred by a swollen eggplant-colored nose, which had dripped a gruesome mustache of blood down my upper lip. Even worse, my cheeks were covered with some sort of rash that looked suspiciously like. My heart climbed into my throat. "Horrors!" I cried. Is that acne? Immortal gods do not get acne. It is one of our inalienable rights. Yet I leaned closer to the glass and saw that my skin was indeed a scarred landscape of whiteheads and pustules. I balled my fists and wailed to the cruel sky, "Zeus, what have I done to deserve this?" Meg tugged at my sleeve. "You're going to get yourself arrested." What does it matter? I have been made a teenager, and not even one with perfect skin. I bet I don't even have. With a cold sense of dread, I lifted my shirt. My midriff was covered with a floral pattern of bruises from my fall into the dumpster and my subsequent kicking. But even worse, I had flab. Oh, no, no, no. I staggered around the sidewalk, hoping the flab would not follow me. Where are my 8-pack abs? I always have 8-pack abs. I never have love handles. Never in 4,000 years. Meg made another snorting laugh. "Sheesh, crybaby, you're fine. I'm fat. You're average. Average people don't have 8-pack abs. Come on." I wanted to protest that I was not average nor a person, but with growing despair, I realized the term now fit me perfectly. On the other side of the storefront window, a security guard's face loomed, scowling at me. I allowed Meg to pull me farther down the street. She skipped along, occasionally stopping to pick up a coin or swing herself around a street lamp. The child seemed unfazed by the cold weather, the dangerous journey ahead, and the fact that I was suffering from acne. "How are you so calm?" I demanded. "You are a demigod, walking with a god, on your way to a camp to meet others of your kind. Doesn't any of that surprise you?" She folded one of my $20 bills into a paper airplane. "I've seen a bunch of weird stuff." I was tempted to ask what could be weirder than the morning we had just had. I decided I might not be able to stand the stress of knowing. "Where are you from?" "I told you. The alley." "No, but your parents. Family. Friends." A ripple of discomfort passed over her face. She returned her attention to her $20 airplane. "Not important." My highly advanced people reading skills told me she was hiding something, but that was not unusual for demigods. For children blessed with an immortal parent, they were strangely sensitive about their backgrounds. "And you've never heard of Camp Half-Blood?" Or Camp Jupiter? No. She tested the airplane's point on her fingertip. How much farther to Perry's house? Percy's? I'm not sure. A few more blocks, I think. That seemed to satisfy Meg. She hopscotched ahead, throwing the cash airplane and retrieving it. She cartwheeled through the intersection at East 72nd Street, her clothes a flurry of traffic light colors so bright I worried the drivers might get confused and run her down. Fortunately, New York drivers were used to swerving around oblivious pedestrians. I decided Meg must be a feral demigod. They were rare but not unheard of. Without any support network, without being discovered by other demigods or taken in for proper training, she had still managed to survive. But her luck would not last. Monsters usually began hunting down and killing young heroes around the time they turned 13, when their true powers began to manifest. Meg did not have long. She needed to be brought to Camp Half-Blood as much as I did. She was fortunate to have met me. I know that last statement seems obvious. Everyone who meets me is fortunate, but you take my meaning. Had I been my usual omniscient self, I could have gleaned Meg's destiny. I could have looked into her soul and seen all I needed to know about her godly parentage, her powers, her motives and secrets. Now I was blind to such things. I could only be sure she was a demigod because she had successfully claimed my service. Zeus had affirmed her right with a clap of thunder. I felt the binding upon me like a shroud of tightly wrapped banana peels. Whoever Meg McCaffrey was, however she had happened to find me, our fates were now intertwined. It was almost as embarrassing as the acne. We turned east on 82nd Street. By the time we reached 2nd Avenue, the neighborhood started to look familiar. Rows of apartment buildings, hardware shops, convenience stores, and Indian restaurants. I knew that Percy Jackson lived around here somewhere, but my trips across the sky in the Sun Chariot had given me something of a Google Earth orientation. I wasn't used to traveling at street level. Also, in this mortal form, my flawless memory had become flawed. Mortal fears and needs clouded my thoughts. I wanted to eat. I wanted to use the restroom. My body hurt. My clothes stank. I felt as if my brain had been stuffed with wet cotton. Honestly, how do you humans stand it? After a few more blocks, a mixture of sleet and rain began to fall. Meg tried to catch the precipitation on her tongue, which I thought a very ineffective way to get a drink, and of dirty water, no less. I shivered and concentrated on happy thoughts, the Bahamas, the 9 Muses imperfect. Harmony, the many horrible punishments I would visit on Kate and Mikey when I became a god. Again. I still wondered about their boss, and how he had known where I would fall to earth. No mortal could have had that knowledge. In fact, the more I thought about it, I didn't see how even a god, other than myself, could have foreseen the future so accurately. After all, I had been the god of prophecy, master of the Oracle of Delphi, distributor of the highest quality sneak previews of destiny for millennia. Of course, I had no shortage of enemies. One of the natural consequences of being so awesome is that I attracted envy from all quarters. But I could only think of one adversary who might be able to tell the future. And if he came looking for me in my weakened state, I tamped down that thought. I had enough to worry about. No point scaring myself to death with what-ifs. We began searching side streets, checking names on apartment mailboxes and intercom panels. The Upper East Side had a surprising number of Jacksons. I found that annoying. After several failed attempts, we turned a corner and there, parked under a crepe myrtle, sat an Older model blue Prius. Its hood bore the unmistakable dents of Pegasus hooves. How was I sure? I know my hoof marks. Also, normal horses do not gallop over Toyotas. Pegasi often do. Ahar, I told Meg. We're getting close. Half a block down, I recognized the building, a 5-story brick row house with rusty air conditioner units sagging from the windows. Voila! I cried. At the front steps, Meg stopped as if she'd run into an invisible barrier. She stared back towards 2nd Avenue, her dark eyes turbulent. What's wrong? I asked. Thought I saw them again. Them. I followed her gaze but saw nothing unusual. The thugs from the alley. No. Couple of. She waggled her fingers. Shiny blobs. Saw them back on Park Avenue. My pulse increased from an andante tempo to a lively allegretto. Shiny blobs. Why didn't you say anything? She tapped the temples of her glasses. I've seen a lot of weird stuff. Told you that. Mostly, things don't bother me, but if they are following us, I said, that would be bad. I scanned the street again. I saw nothing amiss, but I didn't doubt Meg had seen shiny blobs. Many spirits could appear that way. My own father, Zeus, once took the form of a shiny blob to woo a mortal woman. Why the mortal woman found that attractive, I have no idea. We should get inside, I said. Percy Jackson will help us. Still, Meg held back. She had shown no fear while pelting muggers with garbage in a blind alley, but now she seemed to be having second thoughts about ringing a doorbell. It occurred to me she might have met demigods before. Perhaps those meetings had not gone well. Meg, I said, I realize some demigods are not good. I could tell you stories of all the ones I've had to kill or transform into herbs. But Percy Jackson has always been reliable. You have nothing to fear. Besides, he likes me. I taught him everything he knows. She frowned. You did? I found her innocence somewhat charming. So many obvious things she did not know. Of course. Now let's go up. I rang the buzzer. A few moments later, the garbled voice of a woman answered, yes. Hello, I said. This is Apollo. Static. The god Apollo, I said, thinking perhaps I should be more specific. Is Percy home? More static, followed by 2 voices in muted conversation. The front door buzzed. I pushed it open. Just before I stepped inside, I caught a flash of movement in the corner of my eye. I peered down the sidewalk but again saw nothing. Perhaps it had been a reflection. Or a whirl of sleet. Or perhaps it had been a shiny blob. My scalp tingled with apprehension. What? Meg asked. Probably nothing. I forced a cheerful tone. I did not want Meg bolting off when we were so close to reaching safety. We were bound together now. I would have to follow her if she ordered me to, and I did not fancy living in the alley with her forever. Let's go up. We can't keep our hosts waiting. After all I had done for Percy Jackson, I expected delight upon my arrival. A tearful welcome, a few burnt offerings, and a small festival in my honor would not have been inappropriate. Instead, the young man swung open the apartment door and said, "Why?" As usual, I was struck by his resemblance to his father, Poseidon. He had the same sea-green eyes, the same dark tousled hair, the same handsome features that could shift from humor to anger so easily. However, Jackson did not favor his father's chosen garb of beach shorts and Hawaiian shirts. He was dressed in ragged jeans and a blue hoodie with the words "Our swim team" stitched across the front. Meg inched back into the hallway, hiding behind me. I tried for a smile. Percy Jackson, my blessings upon you. I am in need of assistance. Percy's eyes darted from me to Meg. Who's your friend? This is Meg McCaffrey, I said, a demigod who must be taken to Camp Half-Blood. She rescued me from street thugs. Rescued? Percy scanned my battered face. You mean the beat-up teenager look isn't just a disguise? Dude, what happened to you? I may have mentioned the street thugs. But you're a god. About that, I was a god. Percy blinked. Was. Also, I said, I'm fairly certain we're being followed by malicious spirits. If I didn't know how much Percy Jackson adored me, I would have sworn he was about to punch me in my already broken nose. He sighed. Maybe you two should come inside. Caserta Jackson, no gold-plated throne for guests, seriously, dude. Another thing I have never understood, how can you mortals live in such tiny places? Where is your pride? Your sense of style? The Jackson apartment had no grand throne room, no colonnades, no terraces or banquet halls or even a thermal bath. It had a tiny living room with an attached kitchen and a single hallway leading to what I assumed were the bedrooms. The place was on the 5th floor, and while I wasn't so picky as to expect an elevator, I did find it odd there was no landing deck for flying chariots. What did they do when guests from the sky wanted to visit? Standing behind the kitchen counter, making a smoothie, was a strikingly attractive mortal woman of about 40. Her long brown hair had a few grey streaks, but her bright eyes, quick smile, and festive tie-dyed sundress made her look younger. As we entered, she turned off the blender and stepped out from behind the counter. Sacred Sybil! I cried. Madam, there is something wrong with your midsection. The woman stopped, mystified, and looked down at her hugely swollen belly. Well, I'm 7 months pregnant. I wanted to cry for her. Carrying such a weight didn't seem natural. My sister, Artemis, had experience with midwifery, but I had always found it one area of the healing arts best left to others. How can you bear it? I asked. My mother, Leto, suffered through a long pregnancy, but only because Hera cursed her. Are you cursed? Percy stepped to my side. Apollo. She's not cursed. And can you not mention Hera? You poor woman. I shook my head. A goddess would never allow herself to be so encumbered. She would give birth as soon as she felt like it. That must be nice, the woman agreed. Percy Jackson coughed. So anyway. Mom, this is Apollo and his friend Meg. Guys, this is my mom. The mother of Jackson smiled and shook our hands. Call me Sally. Her eyes narrowed as she studied my busted nose. Dear, that looks painful. What happened? I attempted to explain, but I choked on my words. I, the silver-tongued god of poetry, could not bring myself to describe my fall from grace to this kind woman. I understood why Poseidon had been so smitten with her. Sally Jackson possessed just the right combination of compassion, strength, and beauty. She was one of those rare mortal women who could connect spiritually with a god as an equal, to be neither terrified of us nor greedy for what we can offer, but to provide us with true companionship. If I had still been an immortal, I might have flirted with her myself. But I was now a 16-year-old boy. My mortal form was working its way upon my state of mind. I saw Sally Jackson as a mom, a fact that both consternated and embarrassed me. I thought about how long it had been since I had called my own mother. I should probably take her to lunch when I got back to Olympus. I tell you what. Sally patted my shoulder. Percy can help you get bandaged and cleaned up. I can, asked Percy. Sally gave him the slightest motherly eyebrow raise. There's a first aid kit in your bathroom, sweetheart. Apollo can take a shower, then wear your extra clothes. You two are about the same size. That, Percy said, is truly depressing. Sally cupped her hand under Meg's chin. Thankfully, Meg did not bite her. Sally's expression remained gentle and reassuring, but I could see the worry in her eyes. No doubt she was thinking, who dressed this poor girl like a traffic light? I have some clothes that might fit you, dear, Sally said. Pre-pregnancy clothes, of course. Let's get you cleaned up. Then we'll get you something to eat. I like food, Meg muttered. Sally laughed. Well, we have that in common. Percy, you take Apollo. We'll meet you back here in a while. In short order, I was showered, bandaged, and dressed in Jackson-esque Hamadans. Percy left me alone in the bathroom to take care of all this myself, for which I was grateful. He offered me some ambrosia and nectar, food and drink of the gods, to heal my wounds, but I was not sure it would be safe to consume in my mortal state. I didn't want to self-combust, so I stuck with mortal first aid supplies. When I was done, I stared at my battered face in the bathroom mirror. Perhaps teenage angst had permeated the clothes, because I felt more like a sulky high schooler than ever. I thought how unfair it was that I was being punished, how lame my father was, how no one else in the history of time had ever experienced problems like mine. Of course, all that was empirically true. No exaggeration was required. At least my wounds seemed to be healing at a faster rate than a normal mortal's. The swelling in my nose had subsided. My ribs still ached, but I no longer felt as if someone were knitting a sweater inside my chest with hot needles. Accelerated healing was the least Zeus could do for me. I was a god of medicinal arts, after all. Zeus probably just wanted me to get well quickly so I could endure more pain, but I was grateful nonetheless. I wondered if I should start a small fire in Percy Jackson's sink, perhaps burn some bandages in thanks, but I decided that might strain the Jacksons' hospitality. I examined the black t-shirt Percy had given me. Emblazoned on the front was Led Zeppelin's logo for their record label, Winged Icarus Falling from the Sky. I had no problem with Led Zeppelin. I had inspired all their best songs. But I had a sneaking suspicion that Percy had given me this shirt as a joke, the fall from the sky. Yes, har har. I didn't need to be a god of poetry to spot the metaphor. I decided not to comment on it. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. I took a deep breath. Then I did my usual motivational speech in the mirror, "You are gorgeous. And people love you." I went out to face the world. Percy was sitting on his bed, staring at the trail of blood droplets I had made across his carpet. "Sorry about that," I said. Percy spread his hands. "Actually, I was thinking about the last time I had a nosebleed." Oh. The memory came back to me, though hazy and incomplete. Athens. The Acropolis. We gods had battled side by side with Percy Jackson and his comrades. We defeated an army of giants, but a drop of Percy's blood hit the earth and awakened the Earth Mother Gaia, who had not been in a good mood. That's when Zeus turned on me. He'd accused me of starting the whole thing, just because Gaia had duped one of my progeny, a boy named Octavian, into plunging the Roman and Greek demigod camps into a civil war that almost destroyed human civilization. I ask you, how was that my fault? Regardless, Zeus had held me responsible for Octavian's delusions of grandeur. Zeus seemed to Consider egotism a trait the boy had inherited from me. Which is ridiculous. I am much too self-aware to be egotistical. What happened to you, man? Percy's voice stirred me from my reverie. The war ended in August. It's January. It is. I suppose the wintry weather should have been a clue, but I hadn't given it much thought. Last I saw you, Percy said, Zeus was chewing you out at the Acropolis. Then bam, he vaporized you. Nobody's seen or heard from you for 6 months. I tried to recall, but my memories of guardhood were getting fuzzier rather than clearer. What had happened in the last 6 months? Had I been in some kind of stasis? Had Zeus taken that long to decide what to do with me? Perhaps there was a reason he'd waited until this moment to hurl me to earth. Father's voice still rang in my ears, your fault. Your punishment. My shame felt fresh and raw, as if the conversation had just happened, but I could not be sure. After being alive for so many millennia, I had trouble keeping track of time even in the best of circumstances. I would hear a song on Spotify and think, oh, that's new. Then I'd realize it was Mozart's Piano Concerto No. 20 in D minor from 200 years ago. Or I'd wonder why Herodotus the historian wasn't in my contacts list. Then I'd remember Herodotus didn't have a smartphone, because he had been dead since the Iron Age. It's very irritating how quickly you mortals die. I don't know where I've been, I admitted. I have some memory gaps. Percy winced. I hate memory gaps. Last year I lost an entire semester thanks to Hera. Yes. I couldn't quite remember what Percy Jackson was talking about. During the war with Gaia, I had been focused mostly on my own fabulous exploits. But I suppose he and his friends had undergone a few minor hardships. Well, never fear, I said. There are always new opportunities to win fame. That's why I've come to you for help. He gave me that confusing expression again, as if he wanted to kick me, when I was sure he must be struggling to contain his gratitude. Look, man. Would you please refrain from calling me man? I asked. It is a painful reminder that I am a man. Okay, Apollo, I'm fine with driving you and Meg to camp if that's what you want. I never turn away a demigod who needs help, wonderful. Do you have something besides the Prius? A Maserati, perhaps? I'd settle for a Lamborghini. But, Percy continued, I can't get involved in another big prophecy or whatever. I've made promises. I stared at him, not quite comprehending. Promises. Percy laced his fingers. They were long and nimble. He would have made an excellent musician. I lost most of my junior year because of the war with Gaia. I've spent this entire fall playing catch-up with my classes. If I want to go to college with Annabeth next fall, I have to stay out of trouble and get my diploma. Annabeth. I tried to place the name. She's the blonde scary one. That's her. I promised her specifically that I wouldn't get myself killed while she's gone. Gone. Percy waved vaguely toward the north. She's in Boston for a few weeks. Some family emergency. The point is, you're saying you cannot offer me your undivided service to restore me to my throne. Yeah. He pointed at the bedroom doorway. Besides, my mom's pregnant. I'm going to have a baby sister. I'd like to be around to get to know her. Well, I understand that. I remember when Artemis was born, aren't you twins? I've always regarded her as my little sister. Percy's mouth twitched. Anyway, my mom's got that going on, and her first novel is going to be published this spring as well, so I'd like to stay alive long enough to. Wonderful, I said. Remind her to burn the proper sacrifices. Calliope is quite touchy when novelists forget to thank her. Okay. But what I'm saying, I can't go off on another world-stomping quest. I can't do that to my family. Percy glanced toward his window. On the sill was a potted plant with delicate silver leaves, possibly moonless. I've already given my mum enough heart attacks for one lifetime. She's just about forgiven me for disappearing last year, but I swore to her and Paul that I wouldn't do anything like that again. Paul? My stepdad. He's at a teacher in service today. He's a good guy. I see. In truth, I didn't see. I wanted to get back to talking about my problems. I was impatient with Percy for turning the conversation to himself. Sadly, I have found this sort of self-centeredness common among demigods. You do understand that I must find a way to return to Olympus, I said. This will probably involve many harrowing trials with a high chance of death. Can you turn down such glory? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I can. Sorry. I pursed my lips. It always disappointed me when mortals put themselves first and failed to see the big picture, the importance of putting me first, but I had to remind myself that this young man had helped me out on many previous occasions. He had earned my goodwill. I understand, I said with incredible generosity. You will at least escort us to Camp Half-Blood. That I can do. Percy reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out a ballpoint pen. For a moment I thought he wanted my autograph. I can't tell you how often that happens. Then I remembered the pen was the disguised form of his sword, ripped it. He smiled, and some of that old demigod mischief twinkled in his eyes. Let's see if Meg's ready for a field trip. 7-layer dipped chocolate chip cookies in blue. I love this woman. Sally Jackson was a witch to rival Circe. She had transformed Meg from a street urchin into a shockingly pretty young girl. Meg's dark page-boar hair was glossy and brushed. Her round face was scrubbed clean of grime. Her cat-eye glasses had been polished so the rhinestones sparkled. She had evidently insisted on keeping her old red sneakers, but she wore new black leggings and a knee-length frock of shifting green hues. Mrs. Jackson had figured out how to keep Meg's old look but tweak it to be more complimentary. Meg now had an elfish springtime aura that reminded me very much of a dryad. In fact, a sudden wave of emotion overwhelmed me. I choked back a sob. Meg pouted. Do I look that bad? No, I managed. It's just. I wanted to say, you remind me of someone. But I didn't dare open that line of conversation. Only 2 mortals ever had broken my heart. Even after so many centuries, I couldn't think of her, couldn't say her name without falling into despair. Don't misunderstand me. I felt no attraction to Meg. I was 16 or 4,000 plus. Depending on how you looked at it. She was a very young 12. But the way she appeared now, Meg McCaffrey might have been the daughter of my former love, if my former love had lived long enough to have children. It was too painful. I looked away. Well, Sally Jackson said with forced cheerfulness, how about I make some lunch while you 3 talk? She gave Percy a worried glance, then headed to the kitchen, her hands protectively over her pregnant belly. Meg sat on the edge of the sofa. Percy, your mom is so normal. Thanks, I guess. He picked up a stack of test preparation manuals from the coffee table and shook them aside. I see you like to study, I said. Well done. Percy snorted. I hate to study. I've been guaranteed admission with a full scholarship to New Rome University, but they are still requiring me to pass all my high school courses and score well on the SAT. Can you believe that? Not to mention I have to pass that stump dot. The what? Meg asked. An exam for Roman demigods, I told her. The demigod's standard test of mad powers. Percy frowned. That's what it stands for. I should know. I wrote the music and poetry analysis sections. I will never forgive you for that, Percy said. Meg swung her feet. So you're really a demigod? Like me? Afraid so. Percy sank into the armchair, leaving me to take the sofa next to Meg. My dad is the godly one, Poseidon. What about your parents? Meg's legs went still. She studied her chewed cuticles, the matching crescent rings glinting on her middle fingers. Never knew them much. Percy hesitated. Foster home. Step-parents. I thought of a certain plant, the Mimosa pudica, which the god Pan created. As soon as its leaves are touched, the plant closes up defensively. Meg seemed to be playing Mimosa, folding inward under Percy's questions. Percy raised his hands. Sorry. Didn't mean to pry. He gave me an inquisitive look. So how did you guys meet? I told him the story. I may have exaggerated my brave defense against Kate and Mikey, just for narrative effect, you understand. As I finished, Sally Jackson returned. She set down a bowl of tortilla chips and a casserole dish filled with elaborate dip in multicolored strata, like sedimentary rock. I'll be back with the sandwiches, she said. But I had some leftover 7-layer dip. Yum. Percy dug in with a tortilla chip. She's kinda famous for this, guys. Sally ruffled his hair. There's guacamole, sour cream, refried beans, salsa, 7 layers. I looked up in wonder. You knew 7 is my sacred number. You invented this for me. Sally wiped her hands on her apron. Well, actually, I can't take credit, you are too modest. I tried some of the dip. It tasted almost as good as ambrosia nachos. You will have immortal fame for this, Sally Jackson. That's sweet. She pointed to the kitchen. I'll be right back. Soon we were plowing through turkey sandwiches, chips and dip, and banana smoothies. Meg ate. Like a chipmunk, shoving more food in her mouth than she could possibly chew. My belly was full. I had never been so happy. I had a strange desire to fire up an Xbox and play Call of Duty. Percy, I said, your mom is awesome. I know, right? He finished his smoothie. So back to your story, you have to be Meg's servant now. You guys barely know each other. Barely is generous, I said. Nevertheless, yes. My fate is now linked with young McCaffrey. We are cooperating, Meg said. She seemed to savor that word. From his pocket, Percy fished his ballpoint pen. He tapped it thoughtfully against his knee. And this whole turning into a mortal thing, you've done it twice before. Not by choice, I assured him. The first time, we had a little rebellion in Olympus. We tried to overthrow Zeus. Percy winced. I'm guessing that didn't go well. I got most of the blame, naturally. Oh, and your father, Poseidon. We were both cast down to earth as mortals, forced to serve Laomedon, the king of Troy. He was a harsh master. He even refused to pay us for our work. Meg nearly choked on her sandwich. I have to pay you. I had a terrifying image of Meg McCaffrey trying to pay me in bottle caps, marbles, and pieces of colored string. Never fear, I told her. I won't be presenting you with a bill. But as I was saying, the second time I became mortal, Zeus got mad because I killed some of his cyclopes. Percy frowned. Dude, not cool. My brother is a cyclops. These were wicked cyclopes. They made the lightning bolt that killed one of my sons. Meg bounced on the arm of the sofa. Percy's brother is a cyclops. That's crazy. I took a deep breath, trying to find my happy place. At any rate, I was bound to Admetus, the king of Thessaly. He was a kind master. I liked him so much, I made all his cows have twin calves. Can I have baby cows? Meg asked. Well, Meg, I said, first you would have to have some mommy cows. You see, guys, Percy interrupted. So, just to recap, you have to be Meg's servant for some unknown amount of time, I said. Probably a year. Possibly more. And during that time, I will undoubtedly face many trials and hardships. Like getting me my cows, Meg said. I gritted my teeth. What those trials will be, I do not yet know. But if I suffer through them and prove I am worthy, Zeus will forgive me and allow me to become a god again. Percy did not look convinced, probably because I did not sound convincing. I had to believe my mortal punishment was temporary, as it had been the last 2 times. Yet Zeus had created a strict rule for baseball and prison sentences: 3 strikes, you're out. I could only hope this would not apply to me. I need time to get my bearings, I said. Once we get to Camp Half-Blood, I can consult with Chiron. I can figure out which of my godly powers remain with me in this mortal form. If any, Percy said. Let's think positive. Percy sat back in his armchair. Any idea what kind of spirits are following you? Shiny blobs, Meg said. They were shiny and sort of blobby. Percy nodded gravely. Those are the worst kind. It hardly matters, I said. Whatever they are, we have to flee. Once we reach camp, the magical borders will protect me. And me? Meg asked. Oh, yes. You, too. Percy frowned. Apollo, if you're really mortal, like 100% mortal, can you even get into Camp Half-Blood? The 7-layer dip began to churn in my stomach. Please don't say that. Of course I'll get in. I have to. But you could get hurt in battle now. Percy mused. Then again, maybe monsters would ignore you because you're not important. Stop. My hands trembled. Being a mortal was traumatic enough. The thought of being barred from camp, of being unimportant, no. That simply could not be. I'm sure I've retained some powers, I said. I'm still gorgeous, for instance, if I could just get rid of this acne and lose some flab. I must have other abilities. Percy turned to Meg. What about you? I hear you throw a mean garbage bag. Any other skills we should know about? Summoning lightning. Making toilets explode. Meg smiled hesitantly. That's not a power. Sure it is, Percy said. Some of the best demigods have gotten their start by blowing up toilets. Meg giggled. I did not like the way she was grinning at Percy. I didn't want the girl to develop a crush. We might never get out of here. As much as I enjoyed Sally Jackson's cooking, the divine smell of baking cookies was even now wafting from the kitchen. I needed to make haste to camp. Ahem. I rubbed my hands. How soon can we leave? Percy glanced at the wall clock. Right now, I guess. If you're being followed, I'd rather have monsters on our trail than sniffing around the apartment. Good man, I said. Percy gestured with distaste at his test manuals. I just have to be back tonight. Got a lot of studying. The first 2 times I took the SAT. Oh. If it wasn't for Annabeth helping me out, who's that? Meg asked. My girlfriend. Meg frowned. I was glad there were no garbage bags nearby for her to throw. So take a break, I urged. Your brain will be refreshed after an easy drive to Long Island. Huh, Percy said. There's a lazy kind of logic to that. Okay. Let's do it. He rose just as Sally Jackson walked in with a plate of fresh-baked chocolate chip cookies. For some reason, the cookies were blue, but they smelled heavenly, and I should know. I'm from heaven. Mom, don't freak, Percy said. Sally sighed. I hate it when you say that. I'm just going to take these 2 to camp. That's all. I'll be right back. I think I've heard that before. I promise. Sally looked at me, then Meg. Her expression softened, her innate kindness perhaps overweighing her concern. All right. Be careful. It was lovely meeting you both. Please try not to die. Percy kissed her on the cheek. He reached for the cookies, but she moved the plate away. Oh, no, she said. Apollo and Meg can have one, but I'm keeping the rest hostage until you're back safely. And hurry, dear. It would be a shame if Paul ate them all when he gets home. Percy's expression turned grim. He faced us. You hear that, guys? A batch of cookies is depending on me. If you get me killed on the way to camp, I am going to be ticked off. Aquaman driving couldn't possibly be worse. Oh, wait, now it is. Much to my disappointment, the Jacksons did not have a spare bow or quiver to lend me. I suck at archery, Percy explained. Yes, but I don't, I said. This is why you should always plan for my needs. Sally lent Meg and me some proper winter fleece jackets, however. Mine was blue, with the word Blowfus written inside the neckline. Perhaps that was an arcane ward against evil spirits. Hecate would have known. Sorcery really wasn't my thing. Once we reached the Prius, Meg called shotgun, which was yet another example of my unfair existence. Gods do not ride in the back. I again suggested following them in a Maserati or a Lamborghini, but Percy admitted he had neither. The Prius was the only car his family owned. I mean, wow. Just wow. Sitting in the back seat, I quickly became carsick. I was used to driving my sun chariot across the sky, where every lane was the fast lane. I was not used to the Long Island Expressway. Believe me. Even at midday in the middle of January, there is nothing express about your expressways. Percy braked and lurched forward. I sorely wished I could launch a fireball in front of us and melt cars to make way for our clearly more important journey. Doesn't your Prius have flamethrowers? I demanded. Lasers. At least some Hephaestion bumper blades. What sort of cheap economy vehicle is this? Percy glanced in the rearview mirror. You have rides like that on Mount Olympus. We don't have traffic jams, I said. That, I can promise you. Meg tugged at her crescent moon rings. Again I wondered if she had some connection to Artemis. The moon was my sister's symbol. Perhaps Artemis had sent Meg to look after me. Yet that didn't seem right. Artemis had trouble sharing anything with me, demigods, arrows, nations, birthday parties. It's a twin thing. Also, Meg McCaffrey did not strike me as one of my sister's followers. Meg had another sort of aura, one I would have been able to recognize easily if I were a god. But, no, I had to rely on mortal intuition, which was like trying to pick up sewing needles. while wearing oven mitts. Meg turned and gazed out the rear windshield, probably checking for any shiny blobs pursuing us. At least we're not being, don't say it, Percy warned. Meg huffed. You don't know what you were going to say, at least we're not being followed, Percy said. That'll jinx us. Immediately we'll notice that we are being followed. Then we'll end up in a big battle that totals my family car and probably destroys the whole freeway. Then we'll have to run all the way to camp. Meg's eyes widened. You can tell the future. Don't need to. Percy changed lanes to one that was crawling slightly less slowly. I've just done this a lot. Besides, he shot me an accusing look. Nobody can tell the future anymore. The oracle isn't working. What oracle? Meg asked. Neither of us answered. For a moment, I was too stunned to speak. And believe me, I have to be very stunned for that to happen. It still isn't working, I said in a small voice. You didn't know? Percy asked. I mean, sure, you've been out of it for 6 months, but this happened on your watch. That was unjust. I had been busy hiding from Zeus's wrath at the time, which was a perfectly legitimate excuse. How was I to know that Geir would take advantage of the chaos of war and raise my oldest, greatest enemy from the depths of Tartarus so he could take possession of his old lair in the cave of Delphi and cut off the source of my prophetic power? Oh yes, I hear you critics out there, you're the god of prophecy, Apollo. How could you not know that would happen? The next sound you hear will be me blowing you a giant Meg McCaffrey quality raspberry. I swallowed back the taste of fear and 7-layer dip. I assumed, I hoped this would be taken care of by now. You mean by demigods, Percy said, going on a big quest to reclaim the Oracle of Delphi. Exactly. I knew Percy would understand. I suppose Chiron just forgot. I'll remind him when we get to camp, and he can dispatch some of you talented fodder, I mean heroes. Well, here's the thing, Percy said. To go on a quest, we need a prophecy, right? Those are the rules. If there's no oracle, there are no prophecies, so we're stuck in a catch 88. I sighed. Meg threw a piece of lint at me. It's a catch 22. No, I explained patiently. This is a catch 88, which is 4 times as bad. I felt as if I were floating in a warm bath and someone had pulled out the stopper. The water swirled around me, tugging me downward. Soon I would be left shivering and exposed, or else I would be sucked down the drain into the sewers of hopelessness. Don't laugh. That's a perfectly fine metaphor. Also, when you're a god, you can get sucked down a drain quite easily, if you're caught off guard and relaxed, and you happen to change form at the wrong moment. Once I woke up in a sewage treatment facility in Biloxi, but that's another story. I was beginning to see what was in store for me during my mortal sojourn. The oracle was held by hostile forces. My adversary lay coiled and waiting, growing stronger every day on the magical fumes of the Delphic caverns. And I was a weak mortal bound to an untrained demigod who threw garbage and chewed her cuticles. No. Zeus could not possibly expect me to fix this. Not in my present condition. And yet, someone had sent those thugs to intercept me in the alley. Someone had known where I would land. Nobody can tell the future anymore, Percy had said. But that wasn't quite true. Hey, you two. Meg hit us both with pieces of lint. Where was she finding this lint? I realized I'd been ignoring her. It had felt good while it lasted. Yes, sorry, Meg, I said. You see, the Oracle of Delphi is an ancient. I don't care about that, she said. There are 3 shiny blobs now. What? Percy asked. She pointed behind us. Look. Weaving through the traffic, closing in on us rapidly, were 3 glittery, vaguely humanoid apparitions, like billowing plumes from smoke grenades touched by King Midas. Just once I'd like an easy commute, Percy grumbled. Everybody, hold on. We're going cross-country. Percy's definition of cross-country was different from mine. I envisioned crossing an actual countryside. Instead, Percy shot down the nearest exit ramp, wove across the parking lot of a shopping mall, then blasted through the drive-thru of a Mexican restaurant without even ordering anything. We swerved into an industrial area of dilapidated warehouses, the smoking apparitions still closing in behind us. My knuckles turned white on my seatbelt's shoulder strap. Is your plan to avoid a fight by dying in a traffic accident? I demanded. Har har. Percy yanked the wheel to the right. We sped north, the warehouses giving way to a hodgepodge of apartment buildings and abandoned strip malls. I'm getting us to the beach. I fight better near water. Because Poseidon? Meg asked, steadying herself against the door handle. Yep, Percy agreed. That pretty much describes my entire life, because Poseidon. Meg bounced up and down with excitement, which seemed pointless to me, since we were already bouncing quite a lot. You're gonna be like Aquaman, she asked. Get the fish to fight for you. Thanks, Percy said. I haven't heard enough Aquaman jokes for one lifetime. I wasn't joking. Meg protested. I glanced out the rear window. The 3 glittering plumes were still gaining. One of them passed through a middle-aged man crossing the street. The mortal pedestrian instantly collapsed. I know these spirits. I cried. They are, My brain clouded over. What? Percy demanded. They are what? I've forgotten. I hate being mortal. 4,000 years of knowledge, the secrets of the universe, a sea of wisdom, lost, because I can't contain it all in this teacup of a head. Hold on. Percy flew through a railroad crossing and the Prius went airborne. Meg yelped as her head hit the ceiling. Then she began giggling uncontrollably. The landscape opened into actual countryside, fallow fields, dormant vineyards, orchards of bare fruit trees. Just another mile or so to the beach, Percy said. Plus we're almost to the western edge of camp. We can do it. We can do it. Actually, we couldn't. One of the shiny smoke clouds pulled a dirty trick, pluming from the pavement directly in front of us. Instinctively, Percy swerved. The Prius went off the road, straight through a barbed wire fence and into an orchard. Percy managed to avoid hitting any of the trees, but the car skidded in the icy mud and wedged itself between 2 trunks. Miraculously, the airbags did not deploy. Percy popped his seat belt. You guys okay? Meg shoved against her passenger side door. Won't open. Get me out of here. Percy tried his own door. It was firmly jammed against the side of a peach tree. Back here, I said. Climb over. I kicked my door open and staggered out, my legs feeling like worn shock absorbers. The 3 smoky figures had stopped at the edge of the orchard. Now they advanced slowly, taking on solid shapes. They grew arms and legs. Their faces formed eyes and wide, hungry mouths. I knew instinctively that I had dealt with these spirits before. I couldn't remember what they were, but I had dispelled them many times, swatting them into oblivion with no more effort than I would a swarm of gnats. Unfortunately, I wasn't a god now. I was a panicky 16-year-old. My palms sweated. My teeth chattered. My only coherent thought was, yikes. Percy and Meg struggled to get out of the Prius. They needed time, which meant I had to run interference. Stop! I bellowed at the spirits. I am the god Apollo. To my pleasant surprise, the three spirits stopped. They hovered in place about 40 feet away. I heard Meg grunt as she tumbled out of the back seat. Percy scrambled after her. I advanced toward the spirits, the frosty mud crunching under my shoes. My breath steamed in the cold air. I raised my hand in an ancient three-fingered gesture for warding off evil. Leave us or be destroyed, I told the spirits. Blowfus. The smoky shapes trembled. My hopes lifted. I waited for them to dissipate or flee in terror. Instead, they solidified into ghoulish corpses with yellow eyes. Their clothes were tattered rags, their limbs covered with gaping wounds and running sores. Oh, dear. My Adam's apple dropped into my chest like a billiard ball. I remember now. Percy and Meg stepped to either side of me. With a metallic shink, Percy's pen grew into a blade of glowing celestial bronze. Remember what? He asked. How to kill these things? No, I said. I remember what they are, no soy, plague spirits. Also, they can't be killed.